The phone rang just as I stepped into the parking lot after a late meeting, the city humming like a tired machine. I answered on the second buzz. Clara Henderson. I said the way I always do when work calls at odd hours. I own a small resort and catering company in Chicago built from sticky floors and secondhand ovens into chandeliers and booked out weekends. I'm 31, stubborn by nature, and I recently put down $65,000 so my younger brother could get married without worrying about bills. It wasn't just generosity, it was a promise I'd made to him when we were kids that I'd show up no matter what. Clara, the wedding planner, said. Her voice had that careful brightness people use when they're about to hand you something sharp. I'm calling on behalf of Madeline and her mother. I pressed the phone closer. Go ahead. They've decided you're no longer invited to the wedding. Paper rustled on her end, as if she needed a script to keep talking. But the deposit will remain. The $65,000 is locked in. For a second, the streetlights smeared, and I had to lean against my car to keep the world from tilting. They're keeping my money, I said slowly, and I'm not welcome. I'm so sorry, she murmured, which meant she wasn't going to help. Anger didn't arrive like fire. It arrived like cold air, clearing fog from glass. I saw the two of them, the fiancée with her perfect smile, the mother with pearls that could buy a small house, deciding I was staff, not family, even though my name was on the contract and my blood was in the gift. I saw my brother's silence holding the door open for them. Please confirm this is their final decision, I said. It is, she whispered. Then here's mine. My voice went steady, the way it does before I sign something that matters. If I'm not welcome as family, neither is my money. They have until 5 p.m. tomorrow to apologize in writing and invite me properly. Otherwise, I cancel the venue and the catering. The planner inhaled a small, startled sound. I'll relay the message. Do, I said, and ended the call. The screen went black, reflecting my face, and in it, I recognized something I hadn't shown in years. It wasn't rage, it was resolve. I didn't sleep the night after that call. The ceiling above my bed seemed lower than usual, pressing down like a lid. I kept hearing the planner's voice. You're uninvited, but the deposit stays. Every time the words echoed back, my chest tightened until I rolled over and gripped the sheet like it might anchor me to sanity. When dawn finally pried its way through the blinds, I gave up pretending and stumbled into the kitchen. The coffee pot hissed and bubbled while I leaned against the counter, staring at the cracked tile floor I never bothered to replace. I thought about how many mornings had started like this, me determined to keep moving forward no matter what. But this morning carried a new weight: betrayal. My brother David and I had built each other out of scraps. After our parents split, Mom worked double shifts at the hospital, so I became his constant. I was 11 and he was 9 when we learned to cook boxed macaroni on our own, when I stitched the tear in his only winter jacket with hands that shook from cold. I was the one who walked him home from school when kids called him names for the sneakers that fell apart at the seams. I always stood in front of him, even when it meant coming home with bruises I couldn't explain. That bond was iron. At least I believed it was. By the time I was 23, I'd saved every dollar from waitressing, every bonus from event shifts, every holiday tip. I signed the lease for a corner cafe near downtown, painted the walls, myself begged suppliers to give me credit until I could pay in full. The floors were sticky, the ovens secondhand, but people came. 1 cup of coffee turned into catering requests, catering turned into weddings, and weddings turned into the boutique resort I own now. I had no safety net, no family fortune, no last name that opened doors, but I made it work. And I thought that meant something. To me, to David. When he introduced me to Madeline Ross 2 years ago, I tried. She was beautiful, polished, the kind of woman who entered a room like she expected applause. She shook my hand with fingers that felt like glass, and when she looked around my resort, I caught the flicker of appraisal in her eyes. Not admiration, calculation. Her mother, Victoria, was sharper still. We met during a tasting session, the 3 of them seated at a table while I brought out samples. I was about to leave the room when Victoria leaned closer to her daughter and said, It's convenient your brother's sister owns a venue. But let's not confuse convenience with family. The words landed like ice water on my skin. I stood frozen with the tray in my hands, realizing they didn't know I could hear. Or maybe they didn't care. To them I was useful, nothing more. I told myself I could swallow it for David's sake. He looked so proud when he slipped the engagement ring onto Madeline's finger, as if all the years of sacrifice had been worth it to see him happy. So I offered. The resort insisted on covering the deposit. It wasn't just money. It was my way of saying, I'm still your sister first, no matter what anyone else thinks. Now, that promise felt like a knife turned against me. I carried my coffee to my desk and pulled open the bottom drawer. The contract lay there thick with legalese I had demanded when I built the business. My finger traced the clause I'd read 100 times, but never once used the right to cancel if a client's behavior threatened the brand or disrespected staff. For years, it had been my shield protecting employees who couldn't defend themselves. Now it was mine. I closed the folder with a snap and whispered, "No more silence." The clock on the wall ticked steadily louder than the traffic outside. Whatever came next, David would have to choose. The day that followed felt like being trapped inside a drum. Every sound amplified, every silence unbearable. I sat at my desk, pretending to answer emails, but the words blurred into meaningless lines. The only thing I could hear was the echo of that sentence, "You're uninvited, but the deposit stays." It beat against my skull until I could barely breathe. By mid-afternoon, I couldn't sit still. I paced the length of my office, the Chicago skyline framed in glass behind me. My staff watched me from the hallway with cautious eyes. Normally, I projected calm control. Today, they saw the cracks. No one dared come in. They didn't have to. The air around me was sharp enough to warn them away. Finally, I pulled out my phone and stared at David's name. My thumb hovered. I remembered the boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who confessed secrets under blankets, who swore we'd always protect each other. Now that boy had grown into a man who couldn't or wouldn't speak up for me. My stomach twisted, but I hit call. He answered on the third ring, his voice tight. "Clara." "David." I said steady. "I need to hear it from you. Did you agree to this?" There was a pause long enough for me to hear the hum of his fridge in the background. Then he sighed. "Madeline thinks it's better this way. Less complicated." The word scraped across me like metal. Complicated. "I'm your sister, not a problem to solve." I know, he said quickly. "It's just her family has expectations. They don't see things the way we do." I gripped the phone so hard, my knuckles ached. "Then let me make this simple. If I'm not welcome as family, neither is my money. You have until 5 p.m. tomorrow. Either I get a formal apology and a proper invitation, or I cancel the entire event. Venue, catering, everything. Clara, you wouldn't watch me." I ended the call before I could hear him stumble through excuses. My hand trembled, but my decision didn't. That night, I wandered the empty banquet hall of my resort. The chandeliers sparkled, the polished floor reflected the light in pale pools. I'd envisioned this space filled with laughter toasts, my brother's smile. Now, I saw a hollow stage where I was expected to vanish, while my name still paid the bill. Around 10, Rosa, one of my managers, found me still standing there. "Boss," she said softly, "are you okay?" I forced a smile. "Just thinking. You never let clients walk over you." Why now? I looked at her, my throat tight. "Because it's my brother. That's the only reason." She didn't press further. She just squeezed my arm and left me with the silence. Morning brought whispers. Someone from Madeline's side must have leaked what had happened because my phone buzzed nonstop with relatives. Some messages carried sympathy, others carried warnings not to make a scene. As if my dignity were negotiable, a bargaining chip for appearances. By late afternoon, my patience had thinned to nothing. I walked into the boardroom contract folder in hand and set it on the long oak table. My watch ticked louder than the traffic outside. 10 minutes until 5. I sat there in the silence pulse drumming in my ears. Whatever happened next, my line had been drawn. They would either acknowledge me as his sister, or they would lose everything I had offered. At exactly 5 o'clock, the boardroom doors opened. I stayed seated at the far end of the long table contract folder spread in front of me. I wanted them to see me steady, not scrambling. David entered, first his tie loose, his face pale. Behind him came Madeline, polished as always, heels clicking like gunfire. Victoria followed, eyes sharp, scanning the room as if she owned it. Clara David began, but Madeline's voice sliced across his. "This is ridiculous," she said, tossing her bag onto the table. "You don't get to decide who attends our wedding." I folded my hands. "I didn't decide. You did. I'm just responding." Victoria leaned forward. "The deposit is non-refundable. Cancel now, and we'll sue." I slid the contract toward her. Section 12. Ethics Clause. If clients insult or exploit staff or ownership, I can terminate at my discretion. That's not breach. That's protection. For a moment, silence. Then Madeline laughed brittle. "This is jealousy. You've never belonged. You're trying to control him." I rose slowly. "This is about respect. I gave $65,000 to celebrate my brother's happiness. And then I was told I wasn't family enough to attend. You can't erase me and keep my gift." David shifted his fingers, drumming the table. I softened, looking only at him. "I don't want the spotlight. I want dignity. If you stay silent, you're choosing their version of family." Madeline slammed her hand on the table. "Blackmail." "No," I said evenly. "Business." The clock ticked past 5. I snapped the folder shut. "Time's up. My lawyers will cancel tonight." David lurched forward. "Clara, wait." Madeline turned on him. "Don't you dare." He froze, torn. For a moment, I saw the boy who once leaned on me for every answer. Then he sank back into his chair, defeated. Victoria exhaled sharply. "What do you want?" I slid one page across the table. "A signed apology from both of you. A reinstated invitation. An acknowledgement during the ceremony that the money was my gift. Sign or lose the venue." Madeline's jaw tightened, but she scrawled her name. Victoria followed with a stiff flourish. I folded the paper into my briefcase. "Thank you." David's eyes met mine, heavy with shame. He said nothing. They left, heels echoing down the hall. I remained, the fading light stretching across the table. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, the paper in my bag weighed like a stone. "This isn't over," I whispered to the empty room. The signed apology sat folded in my bag, but it didn't feel like justice. It felt like a plaster slapped over a wound that wouldn't close. For days, preparations continued, as if nothing had happened, linen pressed, flowers delivered, menus finalized. To the staff, it was just another wedding. To me, every polished glass and every lit candle whispered betrayal. The rehearsal dinner arrived on a muggy Friday evening. The ballroom glowed under chandeliers, the air thick with roses and roasted lamb. Guests trickled in, wearing glitter and silk, voices rising like champagne bubbles. I lingered near the back, keeping my promise not to cause a scene, though the weight of being allowed there pressed on my chest. Across the room, David raised his glass in a toast. He smiled, but it was the kind of smile that tightened instead of softened his face. His eyes flicked toward me, once quick as a breath. And in that look, I caught both apology and fear. Before I could hold it, Madeline touched his arm, claiming him back with a bright laugh meant for everyone to hear. I drifted toward the buffet content to stand among servers who felt more like allies than the relatives buzzing around the head table. That was when her voice cut through the noise. "Make sure she isn't seated near the family table," Madeline snapped at a young server adjusting place cards. "She might have bought her way in, but that doesn't make her one of us." The words hit me like a slap. I froze, flute of champagne suspended halfway to my lips. The server's hands trembled. He glanced at me, then back at her, caught between duty and shame. The boy couldn't have been older than 19, working his first big event, and she had just humiliated him to wound me. Heat climbed my throat, but I swallowed it. If I erupted here, she would win. So I placed the glass down with deliberate care and turned away, shoulders stiff, heart pounding. What I didn't expect was David's reaction. Across the room, he had stopped mid-conversation, his eyes locked on his fiancée. He saw the server's discomfort, saw my stillness, and something in his face cracked. For the first time, he looked at her the way I had looked all along, with doubt. Our gazes met across the crowded hall. I didn't move, didn't speak, but I let the pain show. He turned away quickly, but not before I saw it, the fracture spreading in his certainty. I left early that night, the noise of laughter chasing me into the parking lot. As I slid into my car, I whispered into the humid air, "Seeds don't take long to grow." The wedding day arrived heavy with clouds. The ballroom sparkled under chandeliers, rows of chairs lined before the altar, flowers spilling fragrance into the air. Everything looked flawless, yet my chest felt hollow. Guests filled the space quickly, their laughter bouncing off marble. I sat near the back, half hidden by roses. My brother stood at the altar, shoulders tight. Madeline swept down the aisle in silk, her smile radiant, her mother glowing with pride. To everyone else, it looked perfect. To me, it looked brittle. The officiant's words blurred into background noise. My thoughts raced to childhood promises, to nights I swore I'd always protect him, to every sacrifice I had made so he could stand here. And now, here I was, a ghost at his wedding. Madeline delivered her vows, clearly sliding the ring onto his trembling hand. Then it was David's turn. He opened his mouth, but nothing came. Seconds dragged. Guests shifted uneasily. The officiant filled the silence with the traditional line, "If anyone here knows of any reason these two should not be joined, speak now or forever hold your peace." Heads turned. I stayed still, locking my gaze on David. I didn't need to speak. He knew. His eyes widened, his chest heaving. Then he shook his head. "I can't do this." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Madeline stared frozen. "What did you say? I can't marry you," he said louder. "Not when the woman who raised me is treated like she doesn't exist. My sister is not staff. She is family. And if you can't respect her, this marriage can't happen." The hall erupted. Guests whispered, some raised phones, others just stared. Victoria shot to her feet, fury blazing. "David, think about what you're throwing away." "I am," he said firmly, "and I'm choosing differently." Madeline stumbled back, her perfect composure shattering. "You're humiliating me." He stepped down from the altar and reached for me. My throat tightened as his hand closed around mine. "Come on," he whispered. Together, we walked down the aisle, past the stunned faces, out through the double doors. The air outside was cool, sharp, honest. He squeezed my hand. I should have seen sooner. Tears blurred my vision. Better now than never. Behind us, the wedding unraveled. Ahead of us, the bond we thought we'd lost had just been reclaimed. The silence outside the ballroom wrapped around us like a second skin. David and I stood under the portico, the murmur of shocked guests muffled by heavy doors. For the first time in weeks, maybe years, his grip on my hand felt steady. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice hoarse. "I let them erase you." I looked at him, seeing the boy I'd once carried through every storm. "You didn't erase me," I said softly, "but you almost lost me." The words cut, but they needed to. He nodded, tears welling, and for once, he didn't hide them. We drove back to my townhouse in silence. The city lights flickered past, but I barely noticed. All I could feel was a strange mix of grief and relief settling inside me. The wedding was over, but our bond wasn't. Maybe it never had been. The next morning, he brewed coffee in my kitchen, clumsy but determined. "I called Madeline," he said. "It's finished." I told her why. I believed him because something in his posture had changed. He wasn't carrying their weight anymore. A week later, an envelope arrived at the resort. Inside was a check for $65,000 and a single line written in Madeline's elegant script, "I was wrong." I set it aside. The money wasn't what mattered. What mattered was what I could build from it. That afternoon, I opened a new account and called it the Boundaries Fund. Its purpose was simple: to give young women in hospitality The resources I wished I'd had money for courses, for uniforms, for safe places when respect was denied. The first grant went out within a month. The thank you email was messy, full of typos and relief. I printed it, taped it inside the folder, and kept it close. David started showing up more. He fixed things around my house, called Mom every Sunday, even joined me at the resort to help serve at charity dinners. He was rebuilding piece by piece, and so was I. Healing didn't come in grand gestures. It came in cups of coffee, in late-night movies, in quiet laughter that hadn't lived in our house for years. A year later, he married Emily, an architect with kind eyes and a grounded soul. Their ceremony was small in a public garden, vows spoken under a wooden arbor while birds sang overhead. I stood beside him, not as staff, not as shadow, but as family. As he hugged me afterward, voice breaking against my shoulder, I knew the truth. Family isn't about money or appearances. It's about who walks with you when the aisle ends. And sometimes it's about who waits long enough for you to turn back and choose differently. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.